first of all, Trump has exposed all the limitations of the system, right? What he's shown us is that the system was built on a bunch of conventions when we all thought we were basically in this for the same thing, right? We were trying to have a democracy that worked. We were trying to expand the franchise to more people. We were trying to make sure that the country was more fair and things were moving along. And then what Trump said is, you know what? There are a lot of seams in this system, and I can exploit all these cracks, and I can try to take away all the things that you want. And in fact, I will take all your conventions and your norms and all the things you're trying to do, and I will use them against you. Because just like last night at the State of the Union, you feel some requirement to sit here in front of me while I poop in your mouth, right? And not do anything about it because you're convinced that this normalcy is what's important, not actually fighting the attack that's happening right in front of your eyes.
Welcome to the latest episode of Trailblaze, the show about the America we are becoming and the America we can be. I'm your co-host, Nayyera.
Hey, I'm Jamal Simmons. I'm glad everybody's here today. Hey, Nayyera. So it's, I guess, the not State of the Union joint session, whatever it is, +1, right? We're right after Trump and Congress.
It's only been a few weeks. It's only been a few weeks of Trump in office, and January felt like forever, and now we're just speeding through the year and trying to understand what pieces are falling, what's coming apart, what can be put together. And I gotta say, it doesn't look like Trump is keeping it all together very well. That was a very bombastic speech, but with Elon Musk there and all of the muskiness in the White House, it seems that approval ratings are dropping. People are questioning openly where are these billions of dollars? Prove it. What are you talking about? All of these cuts. And of course, we're seeing it out in the field when these Republicans who have supported Trump have to meet with their constituents. They are getting yelled out of the room. I mean, looks like actually some of them are running away scared from their own voters.
Yeah, some of them are, because that is legitimately happening. Voters are upset. I wonder if this is a little bit like, remember in 2010 when the Tea Party first started and voters started showing up at Democratic offices, and all the Democrats, all the professional Democrats said, well, these are like paid protesters, and this doesn't represent anything really happening in the community. It's not really real. It's AstroTurf. And then it turned out that Democrats got swamped in the 2010 elections. So it makes me wonder if this is something that is really going on and bubbling underneath that the literature, the polling just hasn't quite tapped into yet.
We're certainly seeing the videos. And that evidence, and the same narrative now, except that Republicans are saying, "Oh, these are Democrats who've been brought in from the big city," but it's many, many hours away from the big city in Kentucky to the small town where you, as a senator or congressman, are holding a town hall. And I'm sure the people who live in your community do not like being told that they are plants and being dismissed when they feel like they were promised something. They were promised that egg prices and food prices would go down on day one, right? Yep. They were promised that they would be taken care of. And that's not happening right now. In fact, looks like given Trump's tariff policies, prices are about to get much, much worse for most of the things that we consume.
Yeah. And in general, they were promised what I think most people didn't like about the Democrats. Of course, you can go back and forth about particular issues, but the question is, what are your priorities, right? Are you prioritizing the concerns of people like me, people who are just trying to live their life every day, get their kids through school, figure out how to, buy a house, pay for their education, whatever it is? Are you prioritizing me? Or are you prioritizing your kind of more ideological friends? Are you paying more attention to the fringes or the ideological parts of your coalition than you are to the practical, pragmatic parts? And I think there are a lot of people who voted for this guy or who didn't vote at all, who just felt like the Democrats had their priorities the wrong way.
Yeah,
and that now it seems like Trump has his priorities the wrong way too.
We hear that so much, right? This idea of, Democrats were playing to the fringes. And listen, the Republicans certainly use the culture wars and the changing demographics of the country as a wedge issue. And they've done that time and again. It's a playbook. They did it really well. But when you speak about the Democrats' challenge, the idea of change you have to show up and say that you want to make change happen and make change that matters to people, and actively saying you're not going to change, that you're going to keep the policies that are that were in the White House at the time. doesn't help.
Does not help.
I was glad to hear Tim Walz, who had been a progressive governor and was somewhat muzzled on the campaign, came out and talked about how if Democrats come back, they're going to need to, swing for the fences this time. Talk about big changes like universal health care, right? This idea of the compromises and nibbling around the edges. That's not this environment anymore. We all know that there are parts of the system that were really broken. Either Democrats step up and say they're going to fix those. That's an opportunity, because right now what Trump is doing, the parts of the system that were working, food safety, nuclear security, medicine and science, they're breaking the things that worked, right? They're trying to break Medicaid. That's a sharp contrast, right? That you can show right now. And I want to see that. I want someone or some group to come out and see that and do something about it.
Yeah, you gotta, I think, both play defense and offense at the same time, right? It's the way you win any game in sports. You can't just do one thing at a time. And I think what we're finding is that the Democrats are so busy just trying to stop Trump from doing the worst things, which are absolutely abhorrent. And you gotta try to stop him from, like you said, gutting the Food and Drug Administration, or not, taking care of the agriculture department and monitoring bird flu or whatever the things are. But what you also cannot do is then leave him to be the only change agent left on the field. The Democrats know there are things that we have to fix. We know there are things that have to get done on behalf of the American people. And it doesn't seem like we're talking about it, or everybody's talking about one thing that's not a coherent plan to try to fix any of this stuff.
And then this is also the opportunity to grab that other political party that's out there, which is the people who didn't show up. 90 million people didn't show up to vote in this last election. And we talk about Democrats versus Republicans. That's a pretty big, sizable population that had shown up prior to, right? These are people who had voted before. And this time they couldn't see the contrast. Now, F around and find out. Clearly, I think a lot of those people are going to see the contrasts. So maybe wow, we didn't realize it could get this bad. We'll get some people to come out and vote. But it's the contrast between Trump and Democrats that needs to be more obvious. What are Democrats for? And I think it's pretty simple. We are for a government that works for you and doesn't do things to you. Government should do things for you, not to you. Why is government trying to do things to my body? Government should stay out of that.
Hi, Georgia.
Hi, David. What do you think the world needs more of?
Well, the world always needs more podcasts.
Didn't you used to have a podcast?
Not only did I used to have a podcast, Georgia, it's coming back. David Tennant Does a Podcast With Season 3 is coming at you.
Okay, and who are your guests?
Who are my guests? What about Russell T Davis? What about Jamila Jamil? What about Stanley the Tooch Toochie?
So it's really just you hanging out with your mates then?
Yeah. Come, join me. David Tennant Does a Podcast With. Bye.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm nervous about one thing about what you just said. You said that, what are these 90 million people going to do? I am just nervous that they're just going to permanently check out, right? Because the question is, are they really going to be impacted enough once they get past the news to believe that that anything they can do will matter, right? Or they'll check out of traditional politics and check into things that maybe are more extreme, right? So there are people who will start looking for other ways to express political discontent that really aren't constructive, like that don't involve institutions and balloting. I think this is where the Democrats have to really get in, because it seems to me like we've been kind of going back and forth the last few cycles, Democrats this time, Republicans next time, people vote this time, they don't vote next time. But what happens when people just get exhausted? They just get exhausted. Yeah.
You and I have done this for a long time, and we're tired.
Yeah. Right? I'm just tired of the whole thing. And they're just like, you know what? I'm fine. Like my kid, it's like, here's, people, this is what happened in the Black community for a long time. The conditions in the African-American community for people who were poor were so bad for so long that people did just check out and they decided not to participate, because it didn't matter if it was a Democrat in office or a Republican in office. Their lives didn't really change. One thing Barack Obama was able to do was sort of give them something tangible that was going to happen if they voted, which was there'll be a Black man in office. Whatever happens, we know there'll be a Black man in office. That's history making. People showed up. Now, over time, that wears off. It's not as big of a deal. And we've been trying to replicate this coalition based on just the demographic arguments. And we've really got to change the lives of the people inside those demographics, right?
I just don't see how Democrats do that in the next 2 to 4 years. You have to be right now, you don't control anything. And there are
Oh, at
people who are
least talk
speaking
about
up.
it.
Yeah, right. Like and there are
Right?
senators.
At least talk about it. Don't
There are
like
senators who
push our
are.
chips in and back
Yeah.
off the table.
There are senators who are. And I think this gets back to an earlier conversation we had that we can't really rely on people in establishment positions or in the institutions to be making all these changes anymore.
Right.
Those
That's
90
right.
million people could get activated in positive ways in which that are community building, or they could become trolls online. That kind of seems to be right. When you get activated, the directions that people are taking these days. And certainly Trump knew how to mobilize the online trolls. This is an interesting data point, though. This idea of a taxpayer-funded crypto bank or crypto reserve, stock market dropping, crypto up in the air all around, and those are some of those online bros that wanted to vote. That wanted to vote for Trump. Like, wait, you're not even getting the thing right that we wanted you to do. Right. So Trump's not working for his coalition. He's working for a much different thing. He's working for power. He's working for a set of people that he wants to hang out with, that they want to mutually make money together off of the public. It's another grift. But if you lose enough of those folks and you actually have folks who do engage in meaningful, constructive ways, then I think there's a way out of this. But the disenchantment, the tiredness, you're telling me lawsuits are going to make the difference when this guy had how many lawsuits against him? Like, he crimed and was convicted so many times, but he still became president. Like, that faith that the system will course correct. I don't know how we fix for that.
Yeah, the system absolutely needs to change. I think what we're seeing now is, first of all, Trump has exposed all the limitations of the system, right? What he's shown us is that the system was built on a bunch of conventions when we all thought we were basically in this for the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. We were trying to have a democracy that worked. We were trying to expand the franchise to more people. We were trying to make sure that the country was more fair and things were moving along. And then what Trump said is, you know what? There are a lot of seams in this system, and I can exploit all these cracks, and I can try to take away all the things that you want. And in fact, I will take all your conventions and your norms and all the things you're trying to do, and I will use them against you, because just like last night at the State of the Union, you feel some requirement to sit here in front of me while I poop in your mouth, right? And not do anything about it because you're convinced that this normalcy is what's important, not actually fighting the attack that's happening right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, it's moments like this call for a real opposition, not coloring within the lines, because this is like, you can't say this is I appreciate holding up a sign. This is not normal, and it being right behind Trump's head. And great, you took over the TV shot for all of 5 seconds, but also, why are you there? Why are you there to begin? Why was this not a more coordinated walkout, some form of show of power or shunning or turning of the backs? Because can I tell you, that would have made Trump lose his mind. Right? That's
that's what they should have done. They should have turned their backs. And I was thinking about we were talking earlier about whether they should walk out. And I was like, I don't know,
stand up,
because that's kind of nuclear.
Your backs,
but the stand up and turn your back,
the whole time.
Now they would have to call the sergeant of arms. We could have had a real conflagration
again.
Right? We saw what happened when Al Green got kicked out for standing up.
Yeah, but he was shouting and yelling. Stand up, turn your back, turn around. It's a good old church shunning. We ignore you. We're not listening to you. Trump would have lost his mind. And so you got to play and understand the psychology of the person there, because none of this is about rules and order and if this, therefore that. It's not a logical flow. So stop trying to just work with that. Like,
he had this line. He had this line he used last night about, taking government away from the unelected bureaucrats. It's like, yeah, but you installed an unelected billionaire instead, right? So is that what it is that we think that people want? That's not what it is people want. But what you're saying, it's a little bit of like it's my Michelle Obama 2025, right? When they go crazy, we go to the crib. Like she's like, I'm not participating in that foolishness. You guys can go to that thing and hang out with that dude and go to the inauguration if you want to. I believe the things I was saying in the fall of 2024.
Yeah. What was that you just said?
Just talking about Michelle. The unelected billionaires who are running the government instead of
this idea of unelected bureaucrats. It's actually language that's been used in extreme alt-right media and online for quite some time. And it's the way that they've been chipping away at experts, and the idea that experts should make decisions that are good for all of us. Right? The idea that, there's a government that functions without me having to worry and think about it. Awesome. They've turned that on its head and made it, well, I didn't vote for you. I didn't elect you. So why are you making decisions? And we need to remind people that the kinds of decisions that are being made are decisions like, no, there's too many maggots in that meat. It's not going to pass inspection, and you're not going to allow it in the grocery store.
Right.
No, that milk is tainted. We're not going to allow that in the grocery store. That medicine is not what you're saying it is. We're not going to allow that to be sold to you as consumers. That those are protections, things good for us. And Trump has been so good about picking up these different strands of ideas that are just anti. They're very negative. They're about tearing things down. And he just connects them. He is repeating ideas that have existed for years. He is just now the avatar for all of these. The question remains, though, when you tear it all down, what comes in its place? What do you got?
And I've been hearing from people, even people who claim to be Democrats or on the left, maybe they wouldn't say they were Democrats, but they're on the left. And they're like, oh, we have to tear it all down. Let's tear it all down. And then what? Right? And then what is it that
are you going to build?
It? And, I was in Haiti a long time ago, and I remember the roads were really bad there. And I was like, oh, this is so, the roads are bad. And someone said, this is one of the problems with short-term dictatorships too, right? Because at least, this was this person's take on it. I don't know if this is real. Is that at least when you had a long-term dictator, they didn't steal all the money. They built a road that would last for some period of time. But when you don't know how long you're going to be in power, they take everybody takes as much as they can, as fast as they can, right? And so I think what we're seeing with Trump, if he gets away with this, is this idea that you're going to build a road that can last for longer than 5 years because it's got the right amounts of tar and cement and whatever else it's supposed to have. Or you're going to have milk that's going to work, or you're going to have medicine that will do the thing that's claimed to do, or you're going to have, a regulated market that has competition in it versus a market that just has a whole bunch of conglomerates that take over everything, which I believe is really what's at the heart of the tech takeover, right? Is like we've moved beyond the period where, you had the early tech where it was like startups and they were all like feisty and pesky and everybody was rooting for them against the big boys and girls. And then you had the kind of the companies that were taking over or disrupting markets like Uber or Airbnb, right? Where they were going into established markets and they were doing things that couldn't exist. But now what we have are a whole bunch of monopolies, right? We've got Amazon and Google and Facebook and what they want is just monopoly power that's the same as what the railroads wanted or the banking industry wanted 100 years ago or any monopoly that just want. And so the monopolies are aligning with the political power to do whatever they want.
Yeah, this is why they say they don't want regulation. Right? I mean, Elon Musk, this Chinese billionaire just bought a bunch of cryptocurrency and then they dropped the investigation into what he was doing.
Right.
This is blatant corruption. And
And you know what I saw
corruption.
today? You know what I saw today? I saw a story about the employees from Doge, and it was talking about how much they're getting paid. So everyone's complaining about these government workers and how they're saving money. You know who's getting paid the most? If a federal employee can get paid right now, are the Doge employees. Like some of them make $195,000 a year, right? Which is the most you can make as an employee, not like a senior executive.
But here's what they're going to say, Jamal.
Head of a department.
Yeah, here's what they say. Like, oh, yeah, well, I found $1 billion in savings. There you go. Meanwhile, none of the Excel spreadsheets line up or make any sense. And like, that's $1 million. You wrote $1 billion. That's millions, right?
Right. So
all of their work needs fact checking, but they're going to justify their own existence.
So the Doge employees are the highest paid federal employees right now. And then you have these contracts that are being taken away or proposed to be taken away that are all going to go to Elon Musk. Verizon had that $2 billion contract that's going to be snatched away and given to Starlink, Elon Musk company, $2 billion. They went through years of vetting and making sure it was going to work. And now it's going to be taken away probably and given to Elon Musk. And that's not the only one.
That's corruption. It's a
grift. The whole thing is just a grift.
It is to use all of these different ideas and stories, throw them together. Trump be the one who talks about them. All he does is repeat the same ideas over and over and over for 8 years. It's the same stuff. And then he gets voted by a 1% margin. He gets there and he breaks through all of the things that are considered norms and rules, and him and his friends who supported him will get what they want to get. They want contracts, they want tax breaks, they're going to get that. What about everybody else? And who's talking for everybody else? And I think that's where you get at with the Democrats. Like, you got to start talking about everybody else and what this means, but without it being just an anti-Trump tirade.
Hi, Georgia.
Hi, David. What do you think the world needs more of?
Well, the world always needs more podcasts.
Didn't you used to have a podcast?
Not only did I used to have a podcast, Georgia, it's coming back. David Tennant does a podcast with Season 3. It's coming at you.
Okay, and who are your guests?
Who are my guests? What about Russell T Davis? What about Jamila Jamil? What about Stanley the Tooch Toochie?
So it's really just you hanging out with your mates then?
Yeah. Come, join me. David Tennant does a podcast with. Bye.
So here's what makes me nervous. NBC had this story yesterday. They talked to 3 voters who voted for Trump. One of them was a big Trumper, always voted for Trump. The other one was kind of a not really voter who just voted for him. And then this one guy, Zach Lindsay, a 28-year-old who voted for Democrats in 2016 and in 2020, voted for Hillary and for Joe Biden, but then voted for Trump in 2024. He praised Trump's recent executive order banning transgender athletes from participating in women's sports and said the world feels more stable under Trump than it would have been under Biden or Harris. So that's the last line. The world feels more stable under Trump. That says to me that this guy is not paying attention to anything about what's really happening in terms of stability, right? Like, NATO is in jeopardy and Ukraine is a problem and he wants to go into the Middle East and own Gaza and like all these things. It's all about the strength that Donald Trump portrays. It's this projection of I've got it handled. And that is all Trump is going after. I'm changing things. I've got a handle. They're coming for me, and I keep winning. That's it.
It's the right. Strength looks like what you want it to look like, and it's very much a voting or caring about issues on feelings. Caring about issues based on feelings and not any facts. And so that's part of the storytelling challenge. Is there are facts. And there's fact checking that is necessary, but that can't be the only part of the story. The rest of the story is, okay, well, what is this supposed to be like? And how do we do that?
Yeah. We go back to where we started, which is without an agenda, without being for something that people can rally around, for something that makes people understand what you're up to. And in a world where we've got to fill the void with content all the time, you can't just be against stuff. We got to socialize people with your agenda, because you can't just show up in the 3 months before election day like we've done in previous elections and say, oh, the Democrats now have a plan. We're going to talk about it for the next 100 days. No, you've got to get people bought into your agenda over time, because they've got to trust you. They've got to trust that you even have something they care about before they listen to you. And right now, people don't trust Democrats. Democrats' poll numbers are bad. And I don't know. It's just playing defense is not going to solve this problem.
Well, and also the idea, like you said before, of only talking about the demographics of things and not about the quality of life, because there's a quality of life that impacts us if we're LGBTQ, if you're gay, if you're Black, if you're whatever, right? There is a quality of life issue here, and not just this amorphous idea of civil rights or this amorphous idea of democracy. And so speaking in concrete terms of what government should do for people, not to people, is a very straightforward message that can be repeated over and over again. And people will maybe start to believe that there's something left in the system worth saving.
And common sense is important, but so is common good. And I think people do believe, most people I know are pretty decent, right? They just want it all to work. If you get sick, they'll hand you a tissue.
I know a bunch of people who are really okay with the idea of, all right, well, sorry, shit out of luck, didn't work out for you.
Well, that's also about scarcity, right? And right now, the whole conservative movement is about telling us that there's scarcity in the world, that this is the last pizza coming out of the kitchen. And so everybody's got to be worried about which slice they get a hold of and how big everybody else's slice is. But the truth is that if we're all working together, this is not the last pizza coming out of the kitchen. There's a whole lot more we can do together to grow the pies and to have a better future. But the progressives, not just Democrats, people who live on the other side of the ideological spectrum have to tell a story about how we all live together, how we prosper together, how we do well, how we make the world a better place, how we don't just do big things, we also do good things. I think we've got to be in that business, because the minute people start feeling like, oh my God, it's all falling apart and the sky's falling and we're horrible, everybody starts hoarding. Everybody starts holding tight. Everybody goes and gets their gun and sits in their basement and tries to hold off the neighbors to keep them from coming to get what they have.
Okay, so you and I have to figure out what that is, because we do spend a lot of time in this is really awful, because it is.
Yeah.
And we try to work our way out of that. And we've talked about community. We've talked about, ways you can help. And we really do have to figure out what that looks like, because we can't wait for the Democratic Party to just do it for us.
Yeah.
Not with
so new ideas. We're doing new ideas.
New ideas.
Yes.
We're going to find some new ideas.
New people with new ideas who want to change the world and make it a better place. So I'm for it.
Thanks, Jamal.
All right. Good to talk to you.
Hi, Georgia.
Hi, David. What do you think the world needs more of?
Well, the world always needs more podcasts.
Didn't you used to have a podcast?
Not only did I used to have a podcast, Georgia, it's coming back. David Tennant Does a Podcast With. Season 3 is coming at you.
Okay, and who are your guests?
Who are my guests? What about Russell T Davis? What about Jamila Jamil? What about Stanley the Tooch Toochie?
So it's really just you hanging out with your mates then?
Yeah. Come, join me. David Tennant Does a Podcast With. Bye.